Hello, and welcome to Stage, Screen, and In Between. I'm Helen. Tonight, I am at the Plainview Public Library, and I'm waiting for the Guardian Angel leader, Curtis Sliwa, who is going to be here speaking with a group called Americans for Legal Reform. And this should really get good. I'm here with Gary Jacobs, and he is the president of Americans for Legal Reform. So how is it going? How do you like it so far?
Oh, it's great. I've been involved. I've been on the board for about 5 years, and recently this summer became president. And it's an honor to be president of the oldest legal reform group in the United States.
Yeah. So now, did you have an incident that propelled you to join a group like this?
Yeah, I actually never heard about it, but like everybody else living on Long Island, we always hear about the corruption and we get frustrated by the taxes, and we read in the paper constantly about all these things, but I never really got involved in it. I was sort of just sat back like a lot of people and said, well, there's nothing I can do about it. But in 2005, I got involved in a divorce and in the court system, and then really realized how messed up things are here on Long Island, how judges are appointed as political patronage jobs, even though I thought they were elected. They're really not. They're appointed by parties. I realized that a lot of them are corrupt, they're biased, and they're protected all the way up to the top. In fact, in my opinion, right up to the governor's office is involved. So that propelled me. I said, you know what, there's nothing I can do about my case, but if I can help somebody else and prevent people from going through the horror that I went through, then I'm going to do whatever I can to stop it. So that propelled me.
But you do know that there are lawyers that are good, and I know that you try to advise people what to watch out for and what to be aware of, so that they don't fall for the wrong attorney, correct? Now, how many members are in this organization? Do you know?
Well, actually, because we have our membership is voluntary. Okay. So we have a lot of people who, unfortunately, when people come to us, a lot of times they come because they're down on their luck. And they don't really have any money anymore, and we don't turn anybody away from our organization. So we do ask for a donation, but we have over 3,000 paid members at any one time, and our mailing list is over 7,000 active members all across the country. A lot of people support us, but they don't live locally, so they can't come to our meetings.
Now, how often do you have your meetings?
We have meetings once a month at the Plainview Old Bethpage Library. Normally, it's the first Wednesday of every month, but if you check our website, Americans4legalreform.com, you can get an update on when the meeting is.
Yeah, well, tonight is a special night because you have a celebrity guest speaker, Guardian Angel Curtis Sliwa. So tell me, how excited are you about that?
Well, that's great to have somebody big like that because it sort of gives us legitimacy. In fact, over the last 2 years, we've sort of gone from becoming like a fringe group of crazy people who want change. But now you'll see in the media, you'll see a lot of, this is becoming public with all the major politicians getting indicted. And now it's sort of, hey, this is legitimate. You know what these guys have been saying is true. So we've had actually some pretty big politicians, both people running for office and people who are in office, speak at our meetings in the past 12 to 18 months. We have a lot of attorneys because, as you said, there are some good attorneys, and we try to let everybody know about them. So they do come to our meetings and speak. We have a retired judge who's on our board now. So we do have a lot of people, but definitely we're really happy to have Curtis Sliwa here today.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something very interesting because you said, people might think you're crazy people, but sometimes when you come up against an aggravating situation where you believe you're right, you're not getting help, and you might be feeling you're being ripped off, you can appear crazy. You get to that point, but, this is a place where you can kind of vent what's happened to you and get advice on how to proceed, right?
Right. Well, that's really what we're about. There's two components. One of them is change. We advocate for change. We do protests. We go to any public meetings, and we always make sure we have a presence there. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is trying to support people who are going through the system and give them advice. Although we're not attorneys, but we try to give them advice on which attorneys to use, which not to use, what they can do. And also, we're sort of a support group as well, because just saying, hey, I'm not alone in this.
Yeah, that's right. So can you tell our audience out there a website where they can go to get involved, to find out more?
Sure. Go to Americans4legalreform.com, Americans, the number 4, legalreform.com. We have a presence on Facebook. Just do a search for Americans for Legal Reform, and you'll find us. You can reach out. Our founder, Carl Cesara, answers everybody. He lives in Huntington and has no problem problem meeting with anybody and giving advice. I'm Gary Jacobs. I'm in Smithtown. I meet with people quite often. And of course, at the meetings, we always meet with people. After the meetings, we all get together and meet on an individual basis.
Right. Thank you so much, Gary.
Great. Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thanks so much.
I'm here with Curtis Sliwa, and I have to say that I am very honored to meet you. I remember when you first came on the scene, I was a very young girl, and I think you're very brave and knowledgeable. And I have a question for you. Sure. Do you have any female guardian angels?
Yeah, about 1 out of every 8 of the members around the world. We have 5,000 members in 13 countries, 130 cities, is a woman. Yes.
Okay. Now, do you have a training program for the guardian angels when they come on the scene?
Oh, yeah, everyone, whether male or female, a young adult has to go through 3 months of training. We have different training centers. You go through basic martial arts and self-defense. You have to learn about the law because we make citizens arrests. We do physical interventions. You have to be certified in CPR and first aid because for every one crime you run across, there are like 10 medical situations. And then we have to train you in crisis resolution. You know, you're out there in the streets. We have to simulate the kind of problematic situations you're going to come across, and then you go through scenario training.
And what is the longevity of your angels? Do they stay with you long term? Do you have people that drop out? You know, what is the ratio?
There was a federal study done on the guardian angels in the 90s by the Justice Department, and they determined that about an average length of stay of a guardian angel from the time of their training, 3 months, it's about 1.8 years. So just about 2 years.
Yeah, because it's a tough thing to do, right? Because as Carl had mentioned, that you have to go out in the middle of the night in the cold, and there's so much risk involved.
Well, there's that, and then also people, they either get distracted or deflected away into other things, or they start developing families. They have certain school responsibilities.
Yeah, life gets in the way.
Yeah, professional responsibilities.
But you have longevity, and I give you credit. And you know, you're blessed, and you're heaven sent, and you really have a purpose on earth, and you're fulfilling it.
Oh, well, thank you.
Good luck to you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Well, first off, I want to thank Carl, who picked me up in Hicksville, as I had just jumped on the LIRR at Penn Station after filling my second shift of duty at WABC. A welcome relief from the original 3 hours each day, 12 to 3 with Ron Kuby. I got to tell you, my goiter, every day my goiter gets agitated with Ron. Then I get 2 hours, and then I do solo 5 to 6 on the drive home. I came right out here. Some of our guardian angels out in Huntington Station tonight, opening of a new store in a very tough area that's had some gang problems. So we're there for their blue ribbon cutting ceremony, and they should be here momentarily. But I'll address a number of issues. First, I'm sitting Shiva. Even though I'm a Gentile, I'm sitting Shiva. But then again, I have 2 Jewish boys who are the product of a relationship that I have, if you've listened to me, of the many relationships I've had, which has got me into double trouble. But with the Queensboro president, Melinda Katz. And she's raised our 2 boys. They're observant Jews, both Carter and Hunter. Carter's 7. Hunter's 4. My oldest boy is Anthony, who many of you have heard me talk about for many years on WABC. It's almost like we birthed him on the radio. And his mother is Mary, who I've been married to and with before Melinda, although I'm losing track because many of you remember Lisa before that, and then there was Corinne before that. But okay, I have enough fingers to count. But the interesting thing is that I've been able to understand the political process. And I've learned a lot about it in Pillow Talk. Because Melinda, clearly, hardcore Democratic apparatchik, mentored by the Hyman Roth Meyer Lansky of Democratic politics. Thank God they convicted him, Sheldon Silver, that crook. And never mind just Sheldon, also on the opposite side of the aisle, Dean the Greek Skelos and his son, the no-show idiot. Hey, look at this guy. It's like out of The Sopranos. The guy gets a job and won't even show up to read the New York Post or Long Island Newsday and have a cup of coffee at taxpayers' expense. But I have learned over the years, also in the campaign for my very dear Kumbatachich, Rudy Giuliani, and some others, both sides of the aisle, but mostly Republicans, of how corrupt even guys and gals who are doing a good job, this process is. Everybody's, and this is their basic concept. They all approach it this way. And in fact, one time when Sheldon Silver did not accuse me of being an anti-Semite, simply because I called him a crook. Oh, excuse me, you are a crook. But the point is, he looked at me and he said, in a much better time for him, he said, you don't understand, Curtis. We got to feed our people. When they come to the table, we got to feed their bellies. Because if we don't, they won't come back. And without him having to extrapolate that, obviously I knew what he meant. Feeding the patronage system, which is pumping through the veins and arteries of the political process. Now, increasingly, as the power of the local political clubs has diminished, you go to a local Democratic club or a local Republican club, whether they're the majority or the minority, there's shrinking membership. Shrinking membership. And that's because they're aging out. You know, the millennials, all they want to do is say they want to go to virtual meetings, you know, on their iPhone, their smartphones. They say, what? I have to get up and schlep to a meeting? What, are you out of your mind? They want to have it FaceTime, you know. They want to see if all of a sudden they can Skype the meeting. So the power of the old-fashioned political patronage machine is diminished, but they're still alive. And so you learn some street smart lessons. And I also learned by getting kicked out of this very elite high school that there was a general mass in the population that had to count their nickels, dimes, and pennies. They had no choice just to get a box of Pampers at the end of the week. And I could see they were hardworking people, not the best educated. You know, they couldn't always string their words together, but they were hardworking people. So, boy, that was a big levelizer. So one night, one of the mechanics, one of the interns, takes one of the vans that he was working on, a medical van, and he takes it for a joyride, unbeknownst to me. And the cops, 5-0 from the nearby 69th precinct, the DTs, catch him a few blocks away, and they got guns to his head. They got him spread up on the van. And some of the local yokels run up to me, and they say, hey, Carl, he's on. He's spread eagle. They're robbing him, and I think he's getting robbed. So I run over there, and I cold-cocked these two undercover cops. I had no idea they were undercover cops because they were all greasy. You know, they looked like Serpico, you know, back then, you know, playing undercover cop. And I really did a number on them. So within seconds, 5-0 comes in the form of police officers in blue, and they bum rushed me. They broke my nose. They dislocated my shoulder. They took me to the 69th precinct, and then we played Who's a Man's Man in the cell. This is the way it used to be. God forbid any of that would take place now, right? They'd be doing triple life without parole. But I got not only a concrete facial and a wooden shampoo, but an attitudinal readjustment on my way to 100 Skimmershorn Street in downtown Brooklyn. First you go to Gold Street, you get processed, you know, turn left, turn right, take the photos. They say, what happened to your beak? So you don't ever accuse the cops of breaking your nose back then. You said, I fell on it. Say, yeah, you fell on it? Let me hear that again. Hey, guys, you hear what he's saying? That's to the other mutts and scales that I was on the daisy chain perp walk with. You hear it? He fell on his beak. Because you learn real quick if you finger the cops, if you accuse them of doing anything wrong. That's it. They lose your paperwork, and it's a month of Sundays before you see a judge for arraignment. So I finally get arraigned at 100 Skimmerhorn Street, and the two cops that I did a number on, they're there. And the judge, he's looking mean at me. He's eye-fornicating me. He's mad-dogging me. He's going, this looks real bad. I'm going to release you without bail. But we're going to move quickly on this. We have eyewitnesses, we have police and that. You better get yourself an attorney. I said, I don't know any attorneys. And then four of them, like jackals, pop up. You know, they're patrolling the hallways, these B-grade lawyers. There's Simon, there's Ira, there's Lee. They're all out there. They're of absolutely, they have no ability, but they catch the crumbs, you know, in the criminal justice or the civil court justice system. So I end up with one of them, and he goes, I need to talk to your old man. I said, well, what do you need to talk to my old man? He's a merchant seaman. He's out at sea. I need to talk to your old man. So ship-to-shore radio. Do you know what ship-to-shore radio is? It's not like now, you know, you whip this out, you know. So ship-to-shore radio, that means my father talks, and then you talk. And you can barely understand what's being said. So he goes, no problem, Curtis. He believed me on this. He was a street guy himself from Chicago. He came in, he sat. I told him the whole story again. I gave him the business card of the lawyer. He said, I'll settle it. I know exactly where to go. Where do you think he went? You think he went to the attorney, on Court Street? He went to the Thomas Jefferson Democratic Club. Now, my dad was not a man of means. He had to work 2 jobs. When he'd be home on vacation, he was a master craftsman also, so he had a union card as a carpenter, and he would have to shape up just to get the extra work. So there was no extra money. And back then, there were a lot of strikes if you were a merchant seaman, because if the longshoremen went on strike, that's it. You were laid up. If you went on strike, everybody else was on strike. It was a quid pro quo. You scratch my belly, I scratch yours, which meant no money in the household. So they tell him, and I learned this years later from my uncle Vincenz, they tell him, in the Thomas Jefferson Democratic Club, it's going to cost you $10,000 to make this go away. We're going to be like Pontius Pilate. It's all going to go away. Now, where could my father come up with $10,000? First off, he's in an Italian-Jewish community, and he's Polish, right? Blonde hair, blue-eyed, he looks like a movie star. He must be an undercover cop or from the FBI forever busting Italians. Nobody's going to listen to my dad. But he got some street money on points from organized crime, and, it's like extortion. Got the $10,000, walked into the Thomas Jefferson Club, and passed the envelope. The next time I show up in court, it's 3 months later, I'm thinking, oh, man, where are they going to send me? This is doom and gloom. The judge couldn't be nicer. The assistant district attorney there, he was so nice. If I were a diabetic, I would have had insulin shock. The 2 cops who were ready to turn me into a speed bump, they were patting me so hard on the back I had to go for a chiropractic adjustment. My own attorney, he had a big smile on like the cat that swallowed Tweety Bird. And I was wondering, what did they all have laughing gas? Did they go to the dental office for a cavity fill? They all got greased. You know what happened? The old patronage mill. They divided up the $10,000. Naturally, the Democratic Club, the Thomas Jefferson Club got their piece. Everybody got their piece. Everybody was happy, and it went away. And years later, imagine how detrimental that would have been if in one of the first run-ins we had with the police, which if you remember, in the first 13 years of the Guardian Angels, I was getting locked up every day, 76 times in 13 years. Imagine if the headline would have been, founder of the Guardian Angels had assaulted 2 police officers in 1971. It would have been over. So when my uncle, Vincenz, told me this story years later, he said, your dad always said, don't say nothing. He'll work extra jobs. He'll go on watch on the ship. He'll work morning, noon, and night, because you had to pay off these knuckle draggers. Or if they didn't try to harm my father, they would try to harm one of our family members or torch the car or really just be an enemy of society, a nemesis to us, like a hemorrhoid, in which you had to constantly grab the preparation H and hope they would dry up and float away. So to my father, I owe everything. But that's the way justice was done. And unfortunately, a lot of the politicians think it's the old ways that prevail. And they want to put their beak in the trough. And so I learned the hard way of what real life was like in the political process. Now, were there exceptions to the rule? Of course. It doesn't taint every man or woman who follows a political path. But a lot of the structure that is in place, it's systemic. We saw that when Preet Bharara got a verdict guilty on all counts of Sheldon Silver, of Dean Skelos and his no-show son. But why I'm sitting shiver is because Andrew Evil Eyes Cuomo, King Cuomo II, the son of Mario Faccia Brutta Cuomo, King Cuomo I, has escaped indictment. Now think of this. Preet is a good man, but he claims there just wasn't enough to file federal criminal charges against the 3rd guy in the room. Now, are you going to tell me this guy who was weaned on politics, who when his father, Mario Faccia Brutta Cuomo, ran against Ed Koch, remember he had run in a runoff against him for mayor, and the great liberal progressive that he was, when all of a sudden the polls started coming in, and in the runoff, the Democratic runoff, it said Koch is going to win because he's pro-death penalty and you're against the death penalty. What did they launch? What campaign that almost caused Ed Koch to lose that election? Does anybody remember what campaign?
Vote for Cuomo, not the homo.
Right, vote for Cuomo, not the homo. And so, in reality, what saves the day are the people who are independent and autonomous. Now, I'm not a registered Republican. Most times I have supported Republicans, but I'm not a registered Republican. I first registered as a Democrat in 1972. I remember I had a Corvair van. I had long hair. I looked like a hippy-dippy. And I had banners for George McGovern all over the Corvair van. I had no license. I had failed my driving test 4 times. I must have done something good in my life, because let's face it, the cops, they were Goldwater supporters, they were Buckley supporters, and they were not George McGovern supporters. They were Richard Nixon supporters in that election, and I never got stopped once. I had to be the luckiest guy alive. But soon after, I lost the love for the Democrats. I voted for mostly Republicans, but I also realized they were $1 short and a day late. And so I'm an independent. Most Americans who are now registering, particularly in this new generation of millennials, are independents. Are you aware in the state of New Jersey, there are more independents than Democrats and Republicans combined?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. So while Shamu, El Jefe, Chris Christie finally decided to visit his state today, it's nice to know. He's a killer whale. He rolled right up on the Jersey Shore. I wanted to take him to the George Washington Bridge, and say, hey, you see that? We get clipped for $15, and remember Bridgegate? But anyway, he finally decided to visit his home state as the chief executive, give the State of the State address. But most of the people in the state of New Jersey who are registered are independents. So if you add all the Republicans, if you add all the Democrats together, it does not equal the number of registered independents. It is the independents who will determine whoever the next president of the United States is to replace Barack Obama. And they're free agents. And they're not apparatchiks. They're not brainwashed. They're not zombies. They're able to freely choose. And they understand that both parties have indiscretions. If you look in the state of New York, we have these fake, phony, fraudulent third parties that we've seen get misused and abused by the primary parties. They only want to use them during a gubernatorial election, try to get 50,000 votes so that they can have a permanent line on a second line or third line. But they're not, for the most part, truly independent and autonomous. So the political process needs a tremendous colonic. And as you can see, less and less people are engaged, less and less people are voting. So there is a tremendous opportunity for curmudgeons out there, contrarians, those who love to stir up the bull feathers like yourselves, to start really making inroads, because they're not as strong as they claim to be. The major parties are not strong. One, I would say in 10 years, what we see today will no longer exist. So the core can be built for a new age of civic-minded citizens. Civics, and that's what I started this presentation off with. We had civics classes. You know what they give you now in a public school? Oftentimes it's called character education. Now, how do I know that? Because we were asked as guardian angels in the inner city public schools to teach character education. You know what character education consists of? How you wipe your tuchus with the Scott tissue paper, how you brush your teeth, how you wash your hands while singing happy birthday to yourself 7 times to make sure all the germs go away. Nobody taught the youngsters in the house to do this. What a disgrazia, what a shanda. There should be a civics class, mandatory, in every public school. And in that civics class should be individuals like yourself who are called in to speak to the youngsters, to explain to them what your projects are, what they involve. But they have to be taught originally what government is about, how people can make a difference, how they can participate, participatory democracy. They're not taught that at all. And you know something? The politicians want to keep it that way. You really think the Democrats or Republicans want to open up the process? No, because what do every time a vote comes up? They want to suppress the vote. They only go to what they call the P1 voters, those that vote on a regular basis. They don't approach even the mezze, poco, sometimes voters any longer. They're considered, hey, you're not people of consequence. They only want to go for the P1s. And that's why this political process has to be given that colonic. And I tell you, from my bully pulpit at WABC with the 50,000 powerful watts of sound, if you've ever heard me, I've made enemies of cops. I've made enemies of politicians. I've made enemies of organized criminals. I've made enemies of street urchins, mutts and skells, who would thug you up for the last penny you have in your life. Because as far as I'm concerned, there's a very fine line that separates them all. The white-collar criminal to the young thug in the street who's going to jack you up for $5 at an ATM machine. And it's up to us to purge all of them and not allow this continuation. In Albany today, they're dancing the horror, the tarantella. They're joyful that the king of New York State has escaped the execution block of Preet Bharara, Andrew Evil Eyes Cuomo. Look at what happened. You got Hasty. He took over for Meyer Lansky. You got your guy from Long Island. He took over for the other Long Island guy. And the party continues. And when you say reform and ethics reform, they say, what? Is that a foreign language? No. Don't worry. We'll watch after our own. So continue on with your work. Continue to indicate there are just too many lawyers in society. In fact, in some instances, there are like 9 lawyers for every 10 of us, and they have to make business, which is usually mishigash for the rest of us. And go out there and continue to fight the good fight. As I will continue as a guardian angel, as I will continue as a broadcaster, as I will continue with whatever op-eds I'm able to write from time to time, as I will continue until I draw on my last breath in my life, because this country that we so take advantage of, the land of the free, the home of the brave, the way you maintain freedom is by exercising it. The way you show your bravery is to stand up to thuggery, and we got a lot of political thugs out there. And most importantly, the way we honor the sacrifice of our mothers and fathers and grandparents, particularly when we visit them at the gravesite, is by looking at their tombstone and saying, have we done all that we can to perpetuate what our country has stood for? I say, in my generation, baby boomers, we have not. We've got to make sure the millennials, our children, and children's children cherish this image until the day they die. Thanks for having me here tonight.